So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. Today is Thursday, September the 2nd, 2021, and our call-in number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. We'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart. It's amazing to think we're into September already. It's going to be Christmas before we know it. This year has gone so quickly. Of course, part of the reason for that is we have this little blessing around here, Ari Rain, who is now 3 and is just more delightful every day. So, welcome everyone. Honored and delighted that you're here to be part of continuing this conversation about first century Aramaic forgiveness. And the thought on my mind today as we begin the show comes from A Course in Miracles, where the Course speaks about the idea, and it's in the chapter on what is the world from the workbook. And the chapter talks about perception. It says that perception is a skill made up by us to take the place of what the Creator gave us in creation. And that's something that, Jeannie and I have been working with the work we've been doing lately with the intensives, with still point breathing, has kind of opened new levels of process for us. And I'm seeing that on a personal level, that when I deal with something that's a perceptual construct, there's one level of challenge and one level of difficulty in working through it. But when I'm willing to let that perceptual construct go, which happens when you utilize this genius piece of technology called first century Aramaic forgiveness, then I'm getting to process the energetic dynamics of something directly rather than being stuck or lost in the perceptual construct. And if you've not really looked into the forgiveness process yet, you'll note that in Aramaic, the word that's been translated as forgive into English is the word shabag or shabak, which literally translated means to cancel. And most people are quite struck and shocked, and in some measure of disbelief, when they learn that what needs to be canceled in order to engage fully in first century Aramaic forgiveness is the goals that we're holding at any given moment. And many years after beginning to engage in the first century Aramaic forgiveness process, I understand why, because there was nobody that had a clue what was going on or how it worked. I understand why it took so long to really comprehend why and how the process works. So it seems like an appropriate thing to share at this point. Once again, reminding us why and how one would do such a perfectly ridiculous thing as have a wonderful goal that leads to them being in pain and having to cancel that goal. Somebody will be in a situation where let's say they're interacting with somebody and they just want that person to be, let's say, fair with them. And they load the goal of fairness in their minds. They find themselves in a pained perceptual construct. And somebody like Dr. Tim or Jeannie or Michael comes along and says, well, why don't you cancel your goal for fairness here? And it's like, wait a minute. Fairness here is a reasonable thing for me to desire. Why would you suggest that I cancel that goal? Well, actually, it's not me or Jeannie or Dr. Tim suggesting it. It's the man Yeshua 2,000 years ago who created this piece of technology. We just happen to become the beneficiaries of it. Happen to work with it long enough to begin to understand why and how it works. And when I say long enough, I'm saying for me, it took me almost 31, 32, 33 years of full-time engagement with that process to understand what was going on. So I understand why when somebody is first introduced to the idea, it just seems ridiculous. And you have to actually utilize the tool. And when you utilize the tool, all of a sudden, you start to see that things are changing in a way that it just goes beyond belief. So let's see if we can explain it so that if you're new to the process or you only been around a year or 2 or 10 and haven't quite gotten to it yet, what's going on? First of all, you have to understand that when you think you're looking at something in the world, your mind is lying to you. You're not looking at anything. You don't see things through your eyes. Your brain generates the world that you see. The constructs of your brain are what we call perception. And it was a really nice little piece of information that came into the puzzle and helping to understand it. That came from some research that was done, I'm thinking it was back in the 50s. At Harvard, where they discovered that in a time frame where they could measure 10,000 units of electrical activity happening in the brain, the max amount of data that went into construct that the mind shows us was 9 bits. So they could measure 10,000 units of brain cell firings, pretty large, massive data moving. But all that was able to enter into the gate of perception was 9 bits, a very small fragment. The mind selectively used content to build the picture world we see. That's why so many people can stand around a particular event, and then when you hear people describing the event, you wonder if any two of them were at the same event. You sit in the courtroom and 6 different people testify about an accident, and the descriptions are so different. You say, well, certainly they weren't all at the same accident, but they were in terms of the actuality that happened. But each one of them had a construct that showed them something that was inside of themselves. And if there was pain attached to that which was moving inside of themselves, then they tended to say that that event was a painful event. But the pain that they were experiencing, remember that some of the people who were at the accident weren't pained at all. Some of them might have even thought it was funny. But someone experienced it as a painful event because the event resonated in them something that was painful, and the goal that drove their perceptual construct caused the mind to use that painful data. So we have this driver, as we've referred to it previously. The driver for perception is that which selects which 9 bits of data are going to be used to build perception out of the 10,000 brain cells firing. And the person who experiences it as a painful event experiences it as a painful event because the event resonated something connected to pain inside of them, and they loaded a goal in their minds that allowed that pain attached to that perceptual content to enter into their mind's construct. So when we talk about forgiving, we're not doing anything with letting somebody else off the hook, but we're inviting people in any given moment where the mind is using pained content to look at the goal that recruits that pained content, that resonates what's unresolved and has pain attached in them, and that energetic dynamic from inside of them is recruited into activity and becomes part of the mind's construct. And the world has taught us that whatever the actuality is, the event at the moment is the cause of the pain we're experiencing. When the truth is, that which is causing the pain in us, now that's sort of somebody coming up and punching us in the nose. So the genius of this man Yeshua to tell us that in any circumstance where there is pain, what forgiveness looks like is canceling the goal that's driving that pain perception is, I don't know, to me, it's just now understanding it is just so brilliant. I mean, I taught it for decades because it worked without understanding why it worked and what was going on. It took me decades to get to understand it. Interaction with many, 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 many people. So here's what happens. When I really crisply identify the goal that I hold in the situation where I have pain, and I'm willing to cancel that goal, the construct my mind is holding that fills that experience with pain collapses because it's being driven by, it's being resonated by, or activated by, brought to the forefront by the goal that I'm holding. So when I cancel the goal, the whole construct collapses. When it collapses in on itself. And I find a good visualization to really get the core of what's happening here is you'll remember the towers on 9/11. How the towers collapsed in at free fall speed on their own footprint, which of course is silly and impossible from a physics point of view, but that's a different conversation. But when you think about those towers coming crashing down into their own footprint, you think about a perception that holds pain collapsing into its own footprint, then you realize that that collapse gives you access to what the mind keeps hidden underneath the perceptual construct. When that raw pain energy comes forward, not as part of a perceptual construct that tricks us into thinking that this is about Bill or Harry or Mary or Hortense, when that perceptual construct has collapsed and we get to access that data directly, instead of getting lost in the story our mind is telling us with that particular construct, the construct, having dissolved, now gives us access to the pained energy directly. Oftentimes, one will go right back to a memory of the event that happened. And that event might have been 2 months ago, or 2 years ago, or 2 decades ago, or 2 centuries ago. Somebody says, well, Michael, I wasn't around 2 centuries ago. Yeah, well, that's true. But the energetic dynamics held in your genes have been around for eons. And sometimes when you engage in forgiveness, there might be some confusion because I'm accessing something that I don't even have recognition of, because it actually didn't happen to me. It happened to someone in my genetic history. But those energetic dynamics are still there, and when resonated, called on, or activated by a goal, they become part of the perceptual construct of the moment. And so I bring this forward to simply make the point for anyone who's listening, who's building the brain cells, who's really working these tools and understanding it. And I understand that it's not for everybody to go this deeply, and that's okay. But if you recognize that one of the beauties, one of the benefits, one of the amazing things that happens when you do use this technology is that, and you'll remember, before you cancel the goal on the worksheet process, whether you're looking at the app or you've got a printed worksheet, the step before you cancel the goal, you call upon and you bring forward conscious, active, present love. You invite support from that elemental force that is within you. And when that active presence of love is moving in you, whatever opens up that is less than love, whatever your physiology has been tightening against and locking down, and you've worked to inhibit its activity in you so that you don't have to deal with it. And that inhibiting activity might be a habit that was passed on generation to generation to generation to generation. But when you purposely, consciously, when you're heading into something that is pained in you, and you purposely cancel the goal that you know is driving the activity or the resonance of that pained energy, then you get to process that energy directly. And in its direct processing, it's no longer dealt with as oh, look what Bill did to me, and I'm stuck in this big story about Bill and how he did that, and she did that, and they did that, and I went like this, and they hurt me. And, you don't have to go through all the facets of this complicated cover-up. By standing in the willingness to have your perception at any given moment totally collapsed and disintegrated, and standing in the willingness to bring forward your pain directly in the presence of love, when you reach that point, the awesome thing that happens is that the pained content directly exposed to the presence of love rather than indirectly exposed by being projected into your brain's image of someone else, that content, that pain, is transmuted by the exposure to the presence of love, and you're freed of it. And many people, as they use these tools, go, it doesn't make sense. I don't know why I'm not all upset about that thing that just happened to me, because the last 1,007 times that it's happened to me, I've been upset, but here it happened just today, and I had no disturbance and no upset about it. I don't know why. Well, here's why. Because those last 12 or 200 or 600 worksheets that you did, and yeah, it might take 600 or more worksheets that you did around that type of experience, the core pain, you may find it projected into many different people, your brain's image of many different people and many different experiences. But each time you collapse it and you expose another piece of it to active love, pain dissolves. And then the event that your mind was telling you caused your pain can happen again. And you go, well, I don't really understand it, but I'm not upset about that event anymore. Well, the truth is you never were upset about that event. Your brain constructed a projection that your upset was about that event, but your upset was about the fact that you held that upset energy in you. Your pain was about the fact that you held that pain in you, not the fact that someone did something that brought that pain up. So as long as you're working with your story and how Harry did this and Mary did that and Hortense did this, you're skipping around the surface of something. It's kind of like trying to catch, you're in a hurry, you're trying to catch a bar of soap with wet hands. You can't catch up with it. But when you identify, and this is a really important key in the process, when you identify the specific and exact goal that you're holding for Bill or Harry or Mary or Hortense, and you cancel that goal, the related perceptual structures collapse. And that which you made, perception, to take the place of what the Creator gave you in creation, is removed, and you get back what the Creator gave you in creation. And guess what? The Creator is involved in a giant conspiracy. And the Creator's conspiracy is to bring you the absolute best, most profoundly powerful, loving experiences that life has to offer. And guess where that comes from? Just like the pained experiences that seem to come from out there and don't come from out there, the profoundly beautiful, the profoundly connected, the taste, the direct taste of active present love comes from within you. You've never been upset, angry, fearful, sad, depressed about anything that's happened in your life. But if you've had sad and angry, depressing, what your mind tells you are experiences, you've had them because there's been anger, sadness, and depression in you, not because events have happened. And each time you identify the goal in the circumstance where that anger or that sadness or that depression comes to the surface, you identify precisely the goal driving it and cancel the goal. You get to process through. And remember our definition of processing. That is the ability to hold love, conscious, active, and present when something less than love. And so as you process through the root of your pain and your generational pain, Mitakuyasan, the Native Americans had a wonderful phrase, mitaquiasan, and in English, the closest translation I know of that we can get to for those words are, and mitaquiasan are the words that the Native Americans used when they entered into a sweat lodge or into a healing ceremony. And it means, for all my relations, that I'm willing to be the space that stays connected to conscious, active, present love, while the experiences born and bred in me from all of my relations are opened up and healed by exposure to active love. And when that occurs, it doesn't matter when that ancestor left their body behind, whether it was a day ago, a generation ago, 100 generations ago. I now stand in the space where energetically I can take on and transmute that energetic pattern of pain, not only for myself, but everybody in my bloodline who's ever experienced that pain. And I can take it on and transmute it for my future generations. I can open the energetic window for the space to be created that energy is lifted. You can almost imagine, like reaching in and lifting it off of the bloodline, that the load has been removed. And that kind of gives you a window, a picture of why we're here talking to you right now, why we're doing this radio show. Because I know that from experience, most people aren't going to spend. One, most people don't have the brain cells. Two, most people aren't going to spend the time that it takes to understand what I just spent 25 minutes explaining. It's not going to happen. But when you stand in that space of willingness to embrace, you listen to the story about Yeshua in the Garden of Gethsemane, and we're told that he took on the sins of the world, remembering that the word sin in Aramaic simply is an archery term that means energies that are off the mark. That he stood in a space where he said, I'm willing to hold the space and be the space for all of these energetic dynamics, for all of humanity to be liberated. And we can connect with that principle and be part of the process of lifting the pain, not only from ourselves and our generations, but from the world. Churchianity has put it in the way of, he took on the sins of the world and that's what killed him. That's why they murdered him. And it was your fault. A whole fear-based misinterpretation. Simply the man stood as such a space of conscious, active, present love and said, I'm willing to open the space to allow that energy to be processed through me. Are you willing to be the space that allows the energy of your pain, of your generational pain, of the pain of humanity to be processed through you so that in a team effort we can be alleviated of that pain for once and for all, permanently? That's our invitation. If you want to join this team, you want to do this work, that's what we're inviting you to do. And that's why we're here having this conversation, so that build the brain cells, engage in the work, and literally change the whole dynamic of their family system. So I hope that fits and makes sense for everyone as to the reason we're doing what we're doing and the invitation to you to join us in it. And that offers some understanding of what we're here ready to do and support in terms of the healing process. And I'm going to turn to why is this happening to me again and what you can do about it on page 107, and do just a little bit of reading from the book. If you haven't been enjoying the show, if you're new to it, we decided at the beginning of the year we'd read a couple of paragraphs of why is this happening to me again as an opening to the show, so that over the period of the year we covered the whole book. If you haven't read the book yet, you can go online and order it. It's on our catalog. There's an audio of the book that you can purchase. You can go to our website and you can download the book free. We have things set up in a way that, while we do everything we can free, we haven't figured out how to do it for nothing. So there's a way for you to, bring in some sort of cash flow that helps to support us in doing what we're doing, and you're welcome to have it free. You can also, the book is out of print right now. You can also purchase a copy of the book used. Fortunately, it's been out there 20-some plus years, 25, whatever number of years it is. And we put enough copies out there that they're still around for sale used on Amazon or on eBay. There are always copies available you can buy for a couple bucks. And so we're on page, if you're following us, page 107. We've been talking to this character, Richard, about the idea that the body has a mind of its own and how files, so to speak, connect in a mind, understanding how carbon-based memory system, this device that we call a body-mind unit that's made of carbon, and if you look at a carbon atom, you'll find 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons. That's where our pain is stored, 666. Remember that number? You'll notice that the person who watched the accident who was in great pain, the pain that they experienced was stored in their carbon-based memory system. The person who watched the accident and wasn't in pain didn't have that stored in their carbon-based memory system. So they were able to stand as a space of conscious, active, present love and not get lost in pain. The mind of active love in us is the mind that we're designed to think with, to live out of, and that was called the mind of Christ. And then you'll notice there was the thing that was called the Antichrist. Where is that stored? This isn't a religious idea. It's simply that physiologically, our pain, our trauma, the things that take us out of the mind of love are stored in this carbon-based memory. Maybe they understood that when they talked about this Antichrist having a number, 666. And so am I willing to embrace that which is in my carbon-based memory, my 666 database, and process through it? And we're explaining the dynamics. And, if you have the brain cells, Yeshua says, if you go back and look at his words 2,000 years ago, he says, in order to understand what he's talking about, in order to use his work, in essence, what he says is, you've got to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. He says, those who having ears do not hear. Those who having eyes do not see. I promise you, the first time I said to you, cancel the goal and you'll be doing forgiveness, you didn't have the eyes to see and the ears to hear what I just explained. I didn't have it for decades working with it. But now when I say cancel a goal, you've got the eyes and the ears of Yeshua to go, oh, okay, so I cancel the goal, I collapse my perception, I embrace the underlying pain that's been projected into my brain's image of someone else. I realize that they've given me a gift by bringing me an experience that's shown me a part of me that I can heal, and now I step into healing that part of me. If you have the understanding of how the mechanism works, it makes the whole process a lot easier than somebody coming along and saying, well, just cancel your goal or just forgive them. We're not saying forgive anybody for anything. We're saying apply the tool of first century Aramaic forgiveness to collapse the perceptual constructs of your mind so that you get to dissolve everything in you that is less than love. You get to pass that gift on to your whole family system and all of humanity, and you show up in the world as your created essence, living in the mind of love, or what was called the mind of Christ. That's what we're here for. So I'm in this conversation with Richard, and we're talking about how we can get lost in the firing of brain cells. We're talking about what we call the file folder effect. And I use the example of, something that I know Richard and everyone else has, and that's brain cells for two different words. But for most people, those two words have never been hooked together before. So I offer to him, the idea of don't think about a purple alligator. And of course, what happens? Purple and alligator fire. So now those two files, we're illustrating the file folder effect, those two files, whenever the word purple is used or the word alligator, are going to tend to resonate in each other. You notice I talked about that yesterday, and when I offer this, don't think about a purple, what comes to mind? Alligator. Now, 25 years from now, I might say that same phrase, and you'll hear it, and the amplitude of the firing of those brain cells that are linked together through the file folder effect may have decayed away so far that you have no recollection of yesterday or today's radio show, and no recollection of that whatsoever. But when I say don't think about a purple alligator, or pardon me, a purple, and leave the word alligator out, 25 years from now, the file folder effect is going to cause the brain cells that are linked together through that effect to fire in you, even though they never come to conscious awareness, and that's going to be an unconscious influence in your mind. If you listen to the ancient teachings, they tell us that we must take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. That word heart in our updated modern language would be the unconscious. So if firing, now, of course, it's just still the example of purple alligator, but if you can imagine how 25 years later, when you have no recall of me talking about a purple alligator, but realizing the file folder effect is there, and you heard Michael Ryce's voice say, don't think about a purple alligator, would be moving on some level in your mind. Now, extrapolate that out and realize that if something happened when you were 3 years of age, let's say around someone who had a particular length of brown hair, and it was painful. 30 years later, you might be married to a person with brown hair that happens to be that particular length, and those brain cells fire, and all of a sudden you're in pain around them, and you think your pain's got something to do with them, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with them, but it's something that's moving in your deep unconscious. The way you access and remove those unconscious influences, this is how you take care of the heart, and you put an end to the traumatic issues in your life by forgiveness. And punishment come into a marriage, and violence results. Many people try to stay in control so they can live happily ever after, which is another thought key to relationship. All this adds up to more and more confusion. Each of the main realities in these files is highly emotionally charged and linked together. What chance do you suppose that person has of a good marriage? What do you suppose? Divorce, pain, hatred, revenge? It's like being in war. Richard wept in grief and rage. I sat quietly and held the space of love, proceeded through profound emotion. And then we have a key thought in the book. It says, the more we're able to presence love for each other, the faster the healing proceeds. And so this is an example. You look at the fact that we live in a culture with a divorce rate of over 50%, the spousal abuse rate, the child abuse rate, the murder rate in this country, outrageous. How much do you suppose in just these simple paragraphs we just laid out the reason why and what has to be faced and processed through in order for healing to occur? In every arena where there is pain and trauma, there is the file folder effect held in carbon-based memory. And it's time for that to be worked through. And each of us are going to have to face and deal with whatever's stored in our that construct in the mind on family and sexuality and relationship. And of course, the myriad of other events that occur in our lives. The reason we're here is to help people to build the brain cells and to open that understanding and clean up those parts of the mind. And we are honored and delighted that you're here to be part of the process. And our calling number, if you're listening on one of those stations that we can't see in our control panel where we're syndicated, the calling number for the show, if you dial it from your phone, 563-999-3581, will key you directly into the show. And once you dial in and you're listening to the show, if you have a question or comment, need support with something, need clarity with something, if you push 1, that will raise a hand in the control panel, and you'll hear Jeannie's sweet voice introducing you by your area code. Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody out there with a hand up in the phone queue or anything happening in the chat room?
It is all quiet, but I would like to read a full passage. You read or quoted the statement about perception being a skill made up for you to take the place of what God gave you in creation. And I was trying to find that passage so I could put it in the notes. And it's actually, it may be in several places in the course, but where I found it was in the chapter of Undoing Fear. And it's talking about fear and guilt. And it says, why would you cling to it in memory if you didn't desire the effects? Remembering is as selective as perception, being its past tense. It is perception of the past as if it were occurring now and still were there to see. Memory is like perception, is a skill made up by you to take the place of what God gave you in creation. And like all the things you made, it can be used to serve another purpose and to be the means for something else. It can also be used to heal and not to hurt, if you so wish it to be. So I liked reading the whole section of it because even in Dr. Tim's part of the show, when Ann called in and she was talking about retelling a story and adding energy to it and remembering it and keeping it going. And so this went along with that, as well as what you were saying in your introduction, and that our memory, what's stored in our carbon-based memory, is what's used for our perception. And we use it to block what's really out there and not really see what God's given us. And I say we, all of us. So I just wanted to read that whole section. Are you there? I think you're talking, but I can't hear you on the show. I can hear you through the wall. And I'm not sure he can hear me, so I'm going to walk in there. So hold on just a moment, everybody.
And I can hear you through the window. No, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I was just doing a search on my phone as you were talking and reading that, because it does quote it in a very similar way, but actually it's slightly different in the lesson, What is the World? So you can put this reference into, it's lesson 241, section 3, What is the World? And
in this lesson, it talks about how all the world disappears. There's a book out there about the end of the world, and it's not about, everything's going to come crashing down the buildings and all of that. It's about the world of perception being collapsed, and that the world that we live in, the world of false perception, is a construct of the mind, and that when forgiveness is applied, literally what we've been locked into, what we've been lost in, tends to disappear. And so it's a good lesson to really tap into. In fact, if people want to, they can go to our website, whyagain.org, and on the right-hand side, well, actually, I'm not sure where the Facebook page is. I haven't looked at that recently, but they can click, pardon me, not Facebook, but our YouTube channel.
And
go to our
all
YouTube
the links
channel.
are at the top.
At the top. Okay, so click our YouTube channel and then do a search for ACIM, What is the World? And there's a shortened version. We actually have a 2-hour version in our catalog of DVDs that you can purchase, but there's a shortened, I think it's a 32 or 35-minute version of that lesson on our YouTube channel you go to free. But it talks about here in this, that we're trying to get away from what the Creator, what love gave us, and this is where perception is born. And this lesson offers, it says, for knowledge could not offer such insane thoughts, but eyes deceive and ears hear falsely. Now mistakes become quite possible, for certainty is gone. The mechanisms of illusion have been born instead, and now they go to find what has been given them to seek. Their aim is to fulfill the purpose which the world was made to see, was made to witness and make real. They see in its illusions but a solid base where truth exists, upheld apart from lies. But everything they report is but an illusion, which is kept apart from truth. As sight was made to lead away from truth, it can be directed. And whenever I read that line in this particular lesson, I think about that old spiritual tune about wherefore as once I was blind, now I see. But actually, if the words in that song were accurate, it would be, wherefore as once I was sighted, now I see. Because what we call sight, and here the Course very accurately describes it, sight was made to lead away from truth. So wherefore as once I thought I could see things happening out there in the world, and I called that sight, that was perception, and it leads away from truth. And when we wake up, then we can start to utilize even our sight to really, truly open the ability to see and move into vision. And so it's a powerful place to go. And there's another lesson, 32 in the Course, that says, I have invented the world I see. And so when I wake up to that, everything changes. When I stand in a space of willingness to collapse the world I see and question its veracity, then I'm freed from that false world of perception. And that leads to everything changing. And I'm just kind of skipping through my notes in this lesson to just give some highlights for it. So that this particular, or one of the lessons that I've integrated here says, seek not to change the world, but choose to change your mind about the world. Perception is a result and not a cause. When you start putting this all together, it's just so profound and so powerful. And I'm just searching through some notes that I have on this.
And we do have a hand up.
a lesson. Well, let's go to the hand then. That's probably the most important thing to do at this moment. Let's go for it. Say hello to our caller. Jeannie?
Sorry, I hung up on myself. I had to dial back in.
Oh, okay. I lost you there. I was like, oh, what happened?
So I believe it's Doug. 314, you're on the air.
Yes, it is. Hi.
Hey, young man.
Howdy. With a couple minutes left here, I mean, even where you were going was very interesting to me, like when you stopped for the call, but I just wanted to say that I found what you had to say today very helpful, because just another layer of seeing, okay, perception is, you know, it's the illusion that I'm living in out of the past that is built in my brain that can't possibly be anything closer at best than a approximate image, you know, of God's real world. And when I think of giving that up or recognizing that, I can much easier embrace whatever is happening and say, well, there must be some good in it. Like right now, I've been ill. I've been struggling a lot with resisting and trying to do anything I can to save my relationship, you know, and I don't want it to end, but she's been increasingly moving away from it and wanting more and more to end it. And I feel like there's been so much grief and loss come up for me, and I can identify, you know, all this loss from the past and doing worksheets on loss and make her the most important and only important woman in my life. And it just feels so wrong to me, you know, for this to be happening. But I've been reaching for how can I get past that. And I feel like what I wanted to say is that some of today, what you were saying, there was sort of a shift that I really am grateful for, to say that, okay, this is my perception that tells me it's all wrong, and that feels all this loss and grief. And the reality is, the actuality is that God's will is perfect all the time. So if I step outside of perception, then perhaps she is acting in perfect divine accord with the divine will, and this is just perfect, and this is, you know, how life is supposed to be, and it's a gift to myself and to her and to everything. You know, I can't know that her choice is wrong. And so anyway, I wanted to just speak that, see what feedback you had. I felt like saying something about it will help unwind me a little bit more, which is what I need to do. So much energy unwinding right now. And thank you for the great instruction that was flowing through you today.
Sweet. Well, there's a section, you know, the section Jeannie was reading, memory, like perception, is a skill made up by you to take the place of what God gave you in your creation. And like all things you made, it can be used to serve another purpose and be a means for something else. It can be used to heal and not to hurt, if you so wish. And so, you know, if you look and notice that your language and your words want to go in the direction of what she's doing and how it can be perfect, and you're right, but then you might take it to the next level of looking inside of Doug and what is that event in the world resonating for you that is your healing, that you need to undo in your perceptual constructs.
And
I
that will take you.
All this past loss. Go ahead.
Say again?
I believe it's all these past losses. All this loss energy.
So then, like we were talking about Richard and what Richard has in brain cells is, I gave him that idea of the purple alligator and sex is dirty, save it for the one you love. What's in the past that's coming forward that now needs to be undone and forgiven in you? And my offering is that's the sole purpose of the world at this point, is to show you what you need to heal. And when I go inside and do that healing work, everything shifts and changes.
When you say,
and we're going to run out on the clock, but we're going to run it down till the phone cuts us off. So go ahead.
When you say the sole purpose of the world is to teach us what we need to heal and forgive, I assume you mean the sole purpose as long as we are errant, and as soon as we are healed, then it would be for our bliss. Is that correct?
Correct. The lowercase w world I'm referring to there. Then there's the uppercase W world. It might be a perfect time to go and listen to that lesson, What is the World, on our YouTube channel, because I distinguish between the lowercase w, the world of perception, and then the uppercase W, the world the Creator actually created. So yes, it is made ultimately for our bliss, to restore us to the truth of who we are. Breathing with you. All right, my friend. Be blessed. Yeah. Lots of love. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Create the best year yet of your